The rain came down in sheets that November night, turning the streets of Seattle into rivers of gray. Most people had retreated indoors hours ago, their windows glowing warm against the storm. But one small figure remained outside, pressed against the iron gates of a mansion on Queen Anne Hill. Her name was Maya. She was 6 years old, and she was asking for permission to sleep in a doghouse. "Please, sir," she called through the bars, her voice barely audible over the thunder. "I saw your dog through the window. Could I sleep in his house tonight? Just until morning. I promise I won't bother him." Inside the mansion, Daniel Morrison was working late in his study when he heard the small voice cutting through the storm. At 42, Daniel had built an empire in tech startups, 3 successful exits, a portfolio worth over $200 million, and a reputation for being brilliant, driven, and impossibly alone. He looked up from his laptop, certain he'd imagined it. But the voice came again, more desperate this time. "I'll be really quiet. I just need somewhere the rain can't reach." Daniel stood, his heart suddenly pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the coffee he'd consumed. He walked to the window overlooking the driveway and saw her, a tiny figure in a soaked jacket, her dark hair plastered to her face, her small hands gripping the gate bars. She wasn't looking at the mansion. She was looking at the doghouse, visible in the side yard, a cedar structure he'd built 2 years ago for Max, his golden retriever. Something in Daniel's chest cracked open. He grabbed his coat and ran outside, not bothering with an umbrella. The rain hit him like a wall, cold and relentless, but he barely noticed. He reached the gate and looked down at the child shivering before him. "Sweetheart," he said, his voice gentle despite the storm, "you can't sleep in a doghouse." Her face fell. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked. I'll go." She turned to leave, and Daniel felt panic rise in his throat. "Wait. Please wait." She stopped but didn't turn around. "I meant," he said carefully, "that you can't sleep in the doghouse because you're coming inside, into the house, the real house." Maya turned slowly, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Inside?" "Yes, right now. Before you freeze." "But I'm all wet. I'll ruin your floors." Daniel felt something twist in his chest at those words, at the idea that a 6-year-old was more worried about his floors than her own survival. "Floors can be cleaned. You can't. Come on." He opened the gate, and after a long moment of hesitation, Maya stepped through. She followed him up the driveway, maintaining a careful distance, the way animals do when they're not sure if they're safe. Daniel led her through the front door into a foyer that gleamed with marble and expensive art. Maya stopped just inside, staring up at the chandelier with an expression of such wonder that Daniel had to look away. "My name is Daniel," he said, shrugging off his wet coat. "What's yours?" "Maya," she whispered. "Well, Maya, first things first. You need to get warm and dry. Then we'll figure out the rest." He led her to a guest bathroom, this one more modest than the master bath, but still clearly luxurious by any standard. He started the shower, adjusting the temperature until steam began to rise. "There are towels here," he said, pulling out fresh ones from the cabinet, "and I'll find you something dry to wear. Take as long as you need." Maya stood frozen, staring at the rainfall showerhead as if it were an alien artifact. Have you used a shower before?" Daniel asked gently. She nodded quickly. "Yes, but not like this one. This one looks expensive." "It's just water," Daniel said. "I promise it works the same way." After she closed the bathroom door, Daniel stood in the hallway, his mind racing. He should call someone, Child Protective Services, the police, but something stopped him. The image of Maya's face when she'd asked to sleep in the doghouse, the resignation in her voice, as if she'd already learned that the world wouldn't give her anything better. He went to his bedroom and found the smallest clothes he had: a t-shirt that would still hang to her knees, a pair of athletic shorts with a drawstring. Not perfect, but better than soaked clothing. When Maya emerged 20 minutes later, her skin pink from the hot water, her hair towel-dried into damp waves, she looked like a different child. Or rather, She looked like what she was, a 6-year-old who should have been tucked safely in bed, not navigating city streets alone in a storm. "Better?" Daniel asked. She nodded, clutching the towel around her shoulders like a shield. "Are you hungry?" Her stomach answered before she could, rumbling loudly in the quiet hallway. She blushed and looked down. "I'll take that as a yes," Daniel said, managing a small smile. "Come on, let's see what we can find." In the kitchen, all stainless steel and granite counters, Daniel opened the refrigerator and stared at its contents with new eyes. Leftover Thai takeout, craft beer, yogurt that might be expired. Nothing a 6-year-old should eat. "Do you like grilled cheese?" he asked. Maya's eyes lit up. "I've never had it." Daniel felt that crack in his chest widen. "Then tonight's your lucky night." He wasn't much of a cook, but he could manage grilled cheese. He buttered bread, laid slices of cheddar between them, and set them in a pan. While they cooked, he heated up tomato soup from a can. Maya sat at the kitchen island, her legs dangling from the tall stool, watching his every move with intense focus. When he set the plate and bowl in front of her, she stared at them for a long moment. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked. "Nothing's wrong," she said quietly. "It's just really nice." She ate slowly at first, as if testing whether the food was real. Then hunger took over, and she devoured everything, wiping the bowl clean with the last piece of crust. Daniel poured her a glass of milk, and she drank it in long gulps, some of it dribbling down her chin. When she was done, she carefully wiped her mouth with her sleeve. "Thank you," she said, her voice formal and careful. "That was the best meal I ever had." "Maya," Daniel said gently, sitting down across from her. "Can you tell me where your parents are?" Her expression shuddered immediately, and he saw the walls go up. "I don't have parents." "Everyone has parents, sweetheart." "Not me." Her voice was flat. "My mom left me at a gas station 3 weeks ago. She said she'd be right back, but she never came. I waited 2 whole days before the gas station man called someone." Daniel's hands clenched into fists under the table. "Called who?" "Foster people. They took me to a house with other kids. But the big kids were mean, and there wasn't enough food, and the lady who ran it yelled all the time. So I left." "You ran away from foster care?" She nodded, not meeting his eyes. "I know I'm not supposed to, but I thought maybe if I found a good place to stay, I could take care of myself. I'm good at being quiet. I don't eat much. I just needed somewhere safe." Daniel felt like he'd been punched in the chest. This 6-year-old had been navigating the world alone for weeks, looking for basic safety, and had concluded that a doghouse was the best she could hope for. "Maya, how long have you been on the streets?" 5 days, maybe 6. It's hard to remember." "Where have you been sleeping?" "Bus stops mostly. Under benches when it wasn't raining. Behind the grocery store on 3rd Avenue they have a loading dock that's kind of dry. And one night I stayed in the park bathroom, but a man came in, and I got scared, so I ran." Each word was a knife. Daniel stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, the rain continued its assault, and he thought about this tiny child navigating those streets, looking for shelter, settling on a doghouse as her best option. "You're not going back to the streets," he said, his voice rough. "And you're not sleeping in any doghouse. You're staying here." "For how long?" He turned to look at her. "As long as it takes to figure this out." "Figure what out?" "How to make sure you're safe, permanently." Maya's eyes filled with tears, though she blinked them back fiercely. "People don't keep me. That's okay. I'm used to it. But if I could just stay tonight, I promise I'll leave first thing in the morning." "Stop." Daniel crossed back to her, kneeling so they were eye level. "You're not leaving in the morning. Do you understand? I'm not going to put you back on the street." "Why not? You don't know me." "Because no child should sleep in a doghouse when there are beds and safety available. That's why." She studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether he was telling the truth. Finally, she whispered, "Can I meet your dog?" The question was so unexpected that Daniel laughed a sound that felt rusty from disuse. "Yes, absolutely. Max is sleeping upstairs, but he'll be thrilled to meet you." He led her to his bedroom, where Max lay sprawled across his usual spot on the floor. The golden retriever lifted his head when they entered, his tail beginning a lazy wag. "Max, we have a guest," Daniel said. Maya approached cautiously, extending her hand. Max sniffed it, then immediately rolled onto his back, demanding belly rubs. Maya giggled, the first truly childlike sound Daniel had heard from her, and knelt down to oblige. "He likes you," Daniel observed. "I like him too," Maya said, her voice soft with wonder. "He's so fluffy. He's a good judge of character. If Max likes you, you must be pretty special." She looked up at him, and for just a moment, the walls came down completely. He saw the child beneath the survivor, scared, hopeful, desperate to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found somewhere safe. "Come on," Daniel said. "Let's get you to bed. Real bed, not a doghouse." He led her to the guest room, the same one he'd mentioned having but never actually used. The bed was made with sheets that had never been slept in. The room decorated in neutral tones that suddenly felt cold and unwelcoming. "Wait here," he said, and returned a moment later with Max, who padded into the room and immediately jumped onto the bed. "Max sleeps with you tonight," Daniel said. "He's excellent at keeping nightmares away." Maya climbed onto the bed beside the dog, her small body dwarfed by the king-size mattress. Daniel pulled the covers up around her, an action that felt both foreign and somehow right. "Mr. Daniel?" she said, as he turned to leave. "Yes? Thank you for not making me sleep in the doghouse." He looked at her, this tiny person who'd been prepared to settle for so little, and felt something fundamental shift in his chest. "Maya," he said quietly, "you were never going to sleep in the doghouse. Not tonight, not ever. You deserve so much more than that." "Like what?" "Like everything. Safety, warmth, someone who shows up. You deserve everything." She didn't respond, but he saw her arms tighten around Max, burying her face in the dog's fur. Daniel closed the door softly and stood in the hallway, his heart pounding. In the space of 2 hours, his entire life had shifted. He'd opened his door to a child asking for a doghouse, and somehow, in doing so, had opened something in himself he'd thought was permanently sealed. He should be calling authorities, making plans, being responsible. Instead, he went to his study and sat in the dark, listening to the storm, thinking about a 6-year-old who'd learned to expect so little from the world that a doghouse seemed like mercy. And he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Tomorrow, he would call child services. He would do this the right way. But he would not let them take her somewhere she'd run from again. He would not let her disappear into a system that had already failed her once. Somehow, some way, he was going to make sure Maya never had to ask for a doghouse again. The morning sun streamed through the guest room window, and Maya woke slowly, confused by the softness beneath her. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming the warm bed, the dog curled beside her, the quiet house that didn't echo with angry voices. Then she remembered. The rain, the gate, the man who'd said she could come inside. Max lifted his head and licked her face, his tail thumping against the comforter. Maya giggled and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Good morning." She looked up to find Daniel standing in the doorway, holding a tray. "I wasn't sure what you'd like for breakfast," he said, setting it on the bedside table. "So I made a little of everything. Pancakes, scrambled eggs, toast, and orange juice. Also some strawberries, because Max tells me you should always have fruit at breakfast." Maya stared at the food, then at him, then back at the food. "This is all for me?" "All for you." "What if I can't eat it all? Then you save the rest for later. Or we give it to Max, though he's not supposed to have people food." Daniel sat on the edge of the bed. "Maya, I need to talk to you about something important." Her face immediately closed off. "You're sending me back." "No, I'm not sending you anywhere you don't want to go. But we do need to handle this properly. I'm going to call Child Protective Services." She was off the bed in an instant, backing toward the corner. "No, you promised. You said I could stay. Maya, stop. Listen to me. Daniel held up his hands, staying seated so he wouldn't seem threatening. I'm not sending you away, but you're a minor who's been reported missing from foster care. If we don't do this the right way, they'll take you by force, and I won't be able to help you. Do you understand? They'll put me back in that house. Not if I have anything to say about it, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She studied him for a long moment, her small body tense and ready to run. Finally, she gave the smallest nod. Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to make some calls. We're going to get you properly checked out by a doctor, make sure you're healthy, and I'm going to see about becoming an emergency foster parent. What's that mean? It means you stay here, with me, legally, while we figure out what happens next. And if they say no, then I'll fight them, Daniel said simply. I have good lawyers, I have resources, and I'll use every single one of them to make sure you're safe. Maya climbed back onto the bed slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. Why would you do that for me? It was the same question she'd asked last night, and Daniel still didn't have a perfect answer. How could he explain that from the moment he'd heard her voice asking for a doghouse? Something in him had recognized something in her. That they were both people who'd learned to build walls, to expect nothing, to survive alone. Because everybody needs somebody, he said finally, and maybe we need each other. The phone calls took most of the morning. Daniel spoke with child services, explaining the situation, assuring them that Maya was safe and well cared for. A social worker named Patricia Chen was assigned to the case. Mr. Morrison, Patricia said on the phone, her voice kind but firm. I appreciate what you've done, truly, but you understand we have protocols. Maya is a ward of the state. She ran from a licensed foster home. I need to come assess the situation in person. Of course. When can you come? This afternoon, 2 o'clock. After he hung up, Daniel found Maya in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the floor with Max's head in her lap. Someone's coming to see us this afternoon, he said gently. Her name is Patricia. She's going to want to talk to both of us. Is she going to take me away? Not if I can help it. But Maya, you need to tell her the truth about the foster home. About why you ran. Can you do that? She nodded slowly. And there's something else. We need to get you checked out by a doctor. Make sure you're okay after being on the streets. Fear flickered across her face. I'll be with you the whole time, Daniel added quickly. I won't leave you alone, I promise. The pediatrician's office was bright and cheerful, full of toys and colorful murals. Dr. Sarah Kim was a woman in her 50s with gentle hands and a warm smile. She examined Maya carefully, asking questions in a soft voice. Afterward, she pulled Daniel aside, while a nurse gave Maya a sucker. Physically, she's malnourished, but not dangerously so. Some minor dehydration, a few scrapes and bruises, but nothing serious. Emotionally, Dr. Kim paused. That child has been through trauma. Significant trauma. She has the hypervigilance of someone who's had to survive on high alert. She flinched when I touched her arm unexpectedly. She asked 3 times if the examination would hurt. What does she need? Stability, consistency, therapy, definitely. But most of all, she needs to know she's safe, that someone's going to show up for her, day after day. Doctor, Kim studied him. Are you prepared for that, Mr. Morrison? Yes, Daniel said, without hesitation. When Patricia Chen arrived at 2 o'clock, Daniel had prepared the house, not by making it perfect, but by making it real. Maya's borrowed clothes were in the laundry. Her breakfast dishes were still in the sink. Max's toys were scattered across the living room floor. This wasn't a showroom. This was a home, or at least it was becoming one. Patricia was a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes that had clearly seen too much. She sat down with Maya first, speaking to her alone, while Daniel waited anxiously in the kitchen. After 30 minutes, Patricia emerged. Mr. Morrison, can we talk? They sat in his study, and Patricia pulled out a file. Maya told me about the foster home, about the older kids who stole her food, about the foster mother who locked children in closets when they misbehaved, about why she ran. Daniel's hands clenched. Is that home still licensed? It will be investigated, I assure you. But right now, my concern is Maya's immediate placement. Patricia leaned forward. She's bonded to you remarkably quickly. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's also not standard. You're a single man with no children, no experience with foster care, and you've known this child for less than 24 hours. I understand how it looks. However, Patricia continued, I've also seen the way you look at her, the way you talk about her, and I've seen children in the system long enough to recognize when someone genuinely cares. She paused. I'm willing to approve emergency foster placement with you, pending a full home study and background check. But Mr. Morrison, you need to understand what you're getting into. This isn't temporary. If you take this on, you're committing to see it through. I understand. Do you? Because Maya has been abandoned before. If you change your mind in a week or a month, it will devastate her. It will confirm every fear she has that she's not worth keeping. Daniel thought about Maya's face when she'd asked about the doghouse, about the way she'd eaten her dinner, as if it might be her last meal, about how she'd thanked him for not sending her away. I won't change my mind, he said. Patricia studied him for a long moment. Then, let's do the paperwork. The first few weeks were an adjustment neither of them had anticipated. Daniel, who'd lived alone for years, suddenly had to think about school enrollment, bedtimes, and whether there was actual food in the house. Maya, who'd survived by being invisible, suddenly had to learn that she was allowed to take up space. He converted his home office into a bedroom for her, letting her help choose paint colors and furniture. She picked purple walls and a bed shaped like a castle, her eyes wide with disbelief when he said yes. Really? I can really have this? Really. School was harder. Maya tested below grade level in reading and math not because she wasn't smart, but because her education had been interrupted by chaos and survival. Daniel hired a tutor and worked with her every evening, celebrating small victories. The first time she brought home a test with a B on it, she burst into tears. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I tried really hard. I promise I did. Daniel pulled her into his arms, his heart breaking. Maya, a B is wonderful. Why are you crying? Because now you'll see I'm not smart enough. You'll send me back. Look at me. He waited until she met his eyes. I am never, ever sending you back. Not for a bad grade. Not for a mistake. Not for anything. Do you hear me? You're not going anywhere. You promise? I promise. But trust wasn't built in promises alone. It was built in moments. It was built when Maya had a nightmare and found Daniel sitting beside her bed in the dark, reading by flashlight so she wouldn't wake up alone. It was built when she accidentally broke his favorite coffee mug and braced for anger, only to have him say, "It's just a mug, sweetheart. We'll get another one." It was built when she got sick with the flu, and he stayed home from work for 3 days, bringing her soup and ginger ale and sitting beside her bed because she was afraid to be alone when she felt bad. It was built when he showed up at her school play dressed in a ridiculous dad sweater that made her laugh until she cried. It was built in the 1,000 tiny ways he showed her, day after day, that she mattered, that she wasn't temporary, that this was real. 6 months after Maya knocked on his gate, Daniel sat across from Patricia Chen one more time. The home study is complete, Patricia said. Your background check is spotless. Maya's therapist reports significant progress. Her teacher says she's thriving, academically and socially. She smiled. Mr. Morrison, I'm recommending that Maya's placement with you become permanent. If you're willing, we'll begin adoption proceedings. Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. I'm willing. Then, congratulations. You're about to become a father. That evening, Daniel took Maya to their favorite spot, a bench overlooking Puget Sound, where they often went to watch the sunset. Max sat at their feet, tail wagging lazily. "Maya, I need to ask you something important." She looked up at him, her expression cautious. Even now, after months of safety, she still sometimes expected the floor to drop out from under her. "Patricia came to see me today. She said that if we both want it, I can adopt you. Officially, legally, forever." Maya's eyes went wide. "That means," Daniel continued, his voice thick with emotion, "that you wouldn't be my foster daughter anymore. You'd be my daughter, just daughter, no qualifiers, no temporary status. You'd be mine, and I'd be yours, and nothing could change that." "Nothing," she whispered. "Nothing. Not even if I mess up? Not even then. Not even if I'm bad. Maya, you could never be bad enough for me to stop being your dad. That's not how this works." She was quiet for a long moment, processing. "Then, if you adopt me, does that mean I'd have a real home?" "You already have a real home." "No, I mean," she struggled to find the words, "I mean, would I get to stay even when I'm old? Would I still be your daughter when I'm grown up?" Daniel's throat tightened. "Yes. Being my daughter isn't something you age out of. It's forever. And I wouldn't have to ask for a doghouse ever again?" He pulled her close, and she curled into his side, small and trusting in a way that still amazed him. "No, sweetheart, you'll never have to ask for a doghouse again. You'll always have a room with purple walls and a bed shaped like a castle, and a dad who thinks you're the most amazing kid in the world." "Really?" "Really." She was quiet for another moment. Then she looked up at him with those eyes that had seen too much too soon but were finally starting to look like a child's eyes again. "Then yes, I want you to adopt me." "Yeah?" "Yeah." She smiled, and it was the real smile, not the careful one she used when she wasn't sure if she was safe, but the wild, uninhibited grin of a 6-year-old who finally believed in happy endings. "Can I call you Dad now, instead of Mr. Daniel? I would love that." "Okay, Dad." The word hung in the air between them, precious and new and absolutely right. The adoption was finalized 3 months later in a courtroom full of people who'd come to witness Patricia, Dr. Kim, Maya's teacher, her tutor, even Dr. Sarah Kim from that first medical visit. Daniel's parents flew in from Arizona, tears streaming down their faces as they officially became grandparents. The judge was a woman named Miriam Keller, who'd spent 30 years on the family court bench. She looked at Maya over her reading glasses. "Young lady, do you understand what adoption means?" Maya nodded solemnly. "It means forever. It means I get to stay. That's exactly what it means. And is that what you want?" "Yes, Your Honor. More than anything." Judge Keller turned to Daniel. "Mr. Morrison, do you understand the lifetime commitment you're making today?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Then, by the power vested in me, I hereby grant this adoption. Maya Chen, you are now Maya Morrison, daughter of Daniel Morrison, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails." She smiled. "Congratulations to you both." The courtroom erupted in applause. Daniel scooped Maya up, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, whispering in his ear, "I have a last name now. I'm Maya Morrison." "You sure are, kiddo. And you're my dad." "I sure am. Forever? Forever." The celebration afterward was at their house, Maya's idea. She wanted to show everyone her purple room, her castle bed, the art supplies Daniel had bought her, the bookshelf filled with books they'd been reading together. But the moment Daniel remembered most clearly came late that evening, after the guests had left. He found Maya in the backyard, standing by the doghouse he'd never had the heart to remove. "What you doing, kiddo?" She turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "Just remembering." "Remembering what?" "That night when I asked if I could sleep here. When I thought this was the best I could hope for." Daniel knelt beside her. "And now? Now I know I deserve more. You taught me that." She looked at the doghouse, then at the mansion behind them, glowing with warm light. "I thought a doghouse would be enough because I didn't know people could want me in their actual house." "Oh, Maya, but you didn't just let me into your house. she continued. You let me into your life. You chose me even when you didn't have to, even when it was hard. Daniel pulled her into a hug, his heart so full it hurt. You know what the truth is? You didn't just get adopted today. I did too. Because before you, I was living in this big, beautiful house. But I was completely alone. You gave me a family. You gave me a reason to come home. You saved me just as much as I saved you. Really. Really. They sat together in the grass, watching the stars come out. Max sprawled beside them. Somewhere in the distance, the city hummed with life. But here, in this moment, their world was quiet and perfect and whole. Dad? Maya said. Yeah? Thank you for not letting me sleep in the doghouse. He kissed the top of her head. Thank you for knocking on my gate. And in that moment, Daniel understood something profound. Love doesn't always arrive in the way we expect. Sometimes it arrives on a stormy night, in the form of a 6-year-old asking for the absolute bare minimum, believing she deserves nothing more. Sometimes all you have to do is open the gate and say, you deserve everything. Sometimes the greatest thing we can give another person is the simple truth. You are worth keeping. Years later, when Maya was 14 and writing a school essay about the moment everything changed, she would describe that night. She would write about being so desperate for shelter that a doghouse seemed like luxury, about a man who could have turned her away but didn't, about learning that she was worth more than she'd ever believed. But she would end with this. My dad didn't save me by giving me a castle bed or buying me things. He saved me by looking at a girl who asked for a doghouse and saying, no, you deserve a home. And then he spent every day proving it was true. That's what real love is. It's not about grand gestures. It's about showing up every single day and saying, you're worth staying for. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. The essay won first place in the state competition. Daniel framed it and hung it in his study, right next to a photo from adoption day, Maya grinning up at him, both of them crying happy tears. A family born not from blood, but from choice. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, they would sit together on that bench overlooking the water, and Maya would ask him to tell the story again. The story of the doghouse. The story of the night that changed everything. And Daniel would tell it, not as a tale of rescue, but as the truth. Two lonely people finding each other in a storm and choosing, day after day, to be family. Because that's what they were, forever. This is a story about seeing worth in the places we least expect to find it. About a child who learned she deserved more than a doghouse, and a man who learned that opening your heart is worth the risk. About how family isn't always about biology, sometimes it's about choice, commitment, and showing up even when it's hard. Maya taught Daniel that love doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's as simple as saying yes when someone asks for help. Sometimes it's about recognizing that the person asking for a doghouse is really asking for something far deeper. Am I worth anything? Do I matter? And Daniel's answer, not just in words but in actions, was a resounding yes. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to carry its message with you. Look around. There are Mayas everywhere, people who've learned to ask for so little because they've been taught they're worth nothing. And maybe, just maybe, you could be a Daniel. Someone who sees past what someone asks for to what they truly need. You don't have to be a billionaire. You don't have to adopt a child. But you can be the person who says, you deserve more than a doghouse. You deserve everything. Because sometimes that's all it takes to change a life. Your support means everything to this channel. If this story moved you, please subscribe so we can continue creating content that reminds us of our shared humanity and the power of compassion. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you have the power to be someone's Daniel. Be the person who opens the gate.